That's quite a sketch. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, thank you for welcoming me. This is strange for me to stand up like this because I'm tall enough and I don't want to be intimidating. I already look like a televangelist. Thank you for letting me know about the dress code here. I walk in here and I'm like, what are we going, a beach or something? But I mean, I guess it's all justified since you all are freezing and I'm not. I really enjoyed Katrina and, was it Benji, is it? Binge. I really love what they did. Please give them a round of applause again. It's wonderful. I don't know why it always fascinates black people when you hear white people who can sing really well. There's a, right, like, I was watching y'all. I was like, they're really good. And I was like, maybe I'm not the only one. And I looked over and I said, yeah, all right. It's like when you found out Bobby Caldwell wasn't black. You remember when you found out Bobby Caldwell wasn't black? You know who Bobby Caldwell is? You gotta know who Bobby Caldwell is. Y'all see you in the Justin Timberlake. Bobby Caldwell. You ever heard that song? What you won't do for love. You remember that song? You thought that was a black person, right? Tell the truth. It's not racist. It's Bobby Caldwell. When I found out it was Bobby Caldwell, I was like, wow. That's how old I am. That meme that's going around on Facebook. Oh, listen, I'm very happy to be here. As my friend Terry said, we crossed paths on Instagram. We met and we had a wonderful conversation. Our first conversation must have lasted like 90 minutes, you know, and it was really wonderful. I loved the idea. He had the thing, which, by the way, it was hard to explain to my wife while I was coming here because she kept asking, where are you going? Where are you going? The thing. She's South American. And that could be dangerous. So I gotta explain this. She is a proud American as of 2012. I just need to put that out there. Very much so. The thing. I really love this theme because it really played into something I truly believe in my life. It's been a theme in my life, and it's something I've had to think about a lot lately. Now that I'm sort of in this place where I'm remaking myself. In a few days, we will be celebrating the second anniversary of the closing of Ringling Brothers, an American institution, 146 years it went, and it was quite a ride. And so now, after 18 years, that's really a lifetime of doing something. It's almost traumatic when you come out of something like that. And I don't know about anybody here, but you probably have had something or a career or something in your life, and suddenly it's gone, and you have to come up with something else. You have to rethink who you are. One of the downsides of working something that long is your identity almost gets tied up in it. And especially something like the circus, because it's such an intimate setting. It's not like any other workplace. You literally go home with the people you know. We lived on a mile-long circus train. It was very enchanting. It was like a city without a zip code. We had apartments on a train. So we didn't have to live outside, we didn't have to live outside a suitcase, whatever. I don't even know how to say it because I didn't have to do it. But we had this train and we had a little apartment there. And, you know, your background, your backyard changed every week. It was quite fascinating, quite stimulating. We had a school and a nursery, so it was a community on wheels. And then you'd go to the venue and peddle joy, you know, and you'd excite people. And that really became a really personal dynamic thing. And you see a lot of these people year after year. You grew up with them. You know, there were kids who are now going to college who still write me, you know, I'm humbled by it, you know, who are saying, I grew up on your voice. How you doing? You know, I mean, it's wonderful. They're dynamic. But your identity becomes a part of your job. And so I think when I left, you know, they gave us the severance, but I was like, man, I wish they would have gave me a shrink or something because I went through this funk. you go through this funk because you're trying to find yourself again, because being ringmaster is quite amazing. To run around and tell people that's what I do. I'm a ringmaster. When I first got the job, I was single and I was young, so I swore this is going to be the ultimate pickup line. And I loved it. I loved walking around, you know. I just had my chest out, and I would just enjoy. I mean, there's something about, I'm a black man, you know. To hear people call me master was like, oh man, this is exciting. It's great. And they do it so eagerly, you know. It's like, that's what you all were, oh, wow. All right. No, I loved it very much, as you can tell. And so I'm in this stage now, this is second year, not being in, where I'm really in the midst of recreating myself. And it's given me a lot of time to contemplate and hustle. And in the midst of that, it's fascinating. I remembered something this wonderful acrobat I worked with told me after he had suffered an injury and he recovered. He was in this amazing act they called The Survivors, literally. It was The Survivors. It was an aerial act. And the big thing about the act was there was no net. They were just, tossing each other in the air. And, they had a airbag to break a fall, but when he fell, he actually just missed the airbag. And, it was a terrible injury, but he recovered. And I remember, he was getting his life back, and he told me, he said, look, man, he said, the thing I learned is when all else fails, go back to the beginning. And this concept of the thing sparked something for me, and I hope for you too. My journey started when I was in a wonderful organization called the Boys Choir of Harlem. And that was the more I think about it, it was my first encounter with the thing, so to speak. And I couldn't have known. My compulsion was I wanted to travel. I just wanted to travel. I grew up in New York City, had a wonderful childhood. I enjoyed it, but my imagination was, like any kids, you're curious. And New York is just bursting with diversity and different things, and I wanted to see where all these people were. I wanted to travel. And so I found out my god brother was in this renowned boy choir, and I decided, well, I'm gonna join that. Yeah, they travel. These kids look like me, they're great. I mean, it's just singing. I do it at a church choir, so I'll get in and start singing. I didn't know it was work. I got there and found out these were like semi, if not professional little boys, and this was like some serious training. It was the kind of training you can't do with today's kids because everybody's fragile. But brilliant man who founded the Boys Choir of Harlem. His name was Dr. Walter J. Turnbull. He's since passed away. He was an accomplished musician, singer, and he was the scariest man I ever met in my life. But he'd do it with a twinkle in his eye, And when I got older, I understood it completely, because with male energy, you gotta kind of tame it in a very interestingly aggressive way with a hint of gentleness there. And that's what he did, and he did it brilliantly. And when I joined the choir, I was 11 years old, and I wanted to quit every other day. Because I was like, I don't understand this. I never picked for anything. I spent 18 months, which for an 11-year-old is like 30 years. Not just rehearsing. I was just learning the fundamentals. But who wants to learn fundamentals, right? You want Instagram fame. Anyway, I was working and working, never getting picked for concerts, nothing. No tours. I'm watching the very elite class. We had different divisions in this boy choir. There was the training choir, which I was in when I started, and then you moved up to the preparatory choir, and then you moved to the concert choir, which was really the body of the pool they picked the elite from. And those were the boys who did everything. All those names you heard him mention, those were the boys who got to perform with those people. And you didn't really know how good they were until you got in it, because you took it for granted because you hung out with them. You knew he was a knucklehead, but It's like they go on stage and they have this superpower. And you're like, well, I can do that too. It looked easier than it was. And so I spent 18 months complaining, telling my parents, I'm not doing this no more. My mother was like, no, you're going back, get out. And I go back and suck it up and wasn't getting picked. I thought it was a conspiracy, the world is coming to an end. And finally I did get picked. And it was quite suddenly, because the only way I actually thought I would get chosen for something, a tour or anything, was one of those kids had to get sick or die. And fortunately, one got sick. I think, till this day, he and I talk about it. I don't know, I think he went to see a girl or something, so he didn't want to go. Well, anyway, it worked for me. And it came, I was walking down the hall, I'll never forget it, and I ran right into Walter Turnbull, who was a massive man to me back then, and he said, I need you to go to Pittsburgh. And I just exploded. I was, I called my mother. It was like hitting the lottery, ran home, boom. Finally, the dream is going to happen. I was 13 years old. I'm going to show them. And I got on that stage in Pittsburgh. Now, I want to explain to you how this show, the program of the Boys Choir of Harlem, was set up. We would do a half hour of classical music, maybe Bach, maybe Mozart, maybe Adolf Hellstork. And then we'd walk off the stage, come back on, and do another 20 minutes, half hour of African-American spirituals. And then we'd go off for intermission, come back and do choreographed music to do Gallington, Gershwin, stuff like that. That was another half hour. We'd go off and come back, and then we just go nuts. We had all this contemporary dance to more popular stuff, and we threw in some Earth, Wind, and Fire and various things. So it was a high-impact show, and you had to have some energy. You had to really be good, and I thought I did. I thought I was ready. After all, they just suddenly chose me, so I was special. So I get on the stage, and we have the classic choir boy robes, and this was quite a lesson for me. And we're just standing there. And you knew better never to move your eyes from that conductor, or you were dead. And that's why I kept my eyes on the guy. I was going. It was the classical section. And then all of a sudden, I started feeling lightheaded and sweating profusely. And I'm just standing there. And before you know it, I couldn't really sing. I just, things started spinning. And I'm going, what is going on? And I thought to myself, you know what? We're going to leave the stage anyway. I'll come back for the spiritual section, right? No. He looked me right in the face, and everybody said, we're just going to go on. And I knew I was dead. So we get to the spiritual section, and the last song we're singing, I'll never forget it. By then, sweat is pouring down to my feet. I'm just dying, and I'm going, God, please don't let me faint. We're singing, and I'll never forget the song. It was called Fix Me, Jesus. And I know no one in the history of the world sang that song with more sincerity than me at the time. But it was fine. But it taught me, you're not always as ready as you think, and that whole process matters. Process matters. To learn that early, at that age, set me up for everything. It even set me up from where I am now. I'm in this funky process of remaking myself. And there's a temptation to go, go on, man. Something's got to jump off. I'm a Jeopardy question. And the lesson in that, I learned a quick lesson in that. It's like, it was funny. I remember this thought came to me, and I realized, I said, you know what? My past doesn't entitle me. Doesn't entitle you. And in this day and age we live now, I was watching all the technology. They have an orchestra in a box. It's amazing how everything's moving, but your past doesn't entitle you. So it doesn't matter what Barbara Walters said. Half these kids don't even know who Barbara Walters is. It's like, wow, you still have to evolve and recreate something out of that. So you don't have to hold on to this thing. But the beauty of going through what I went through then was that, yeah, I can actually thrive in the valley. I can thrive in the wilderness. I'll be okay. I think one of the probably the greatest disservices we're doing to this current generation is we're not giving them that kind of steel. We're not giving them that kind of tough skin. That is a reality in life, because you run into things, that comfortable, wonderful space you're in gets taken from under you, and all of a sudden, what do? A lot of people get so traumatized very easily. You're seeing it now all the time. I mean, it's crazy, like suicide rates are going up, and they're killing themselves over stuff that was like, every day was just school. They called you fat. They called you, it's like they don't have anything to dig into. What is his name? David Goggins. Have you ever heard of him? Yeah, he's like this great American badass. Look him up. And he speaks about his cookie jar when he finds himself in those places in the valley. And what he does is he digs in his cookie jar. And he reminds himself, good Christians call it calling on the promises of God. And it's really true. You dig. That's what the psalmist did when he was running for his life from Saul, right? He started calling on those things. You dig in your cookie jar, you go back to the beginning. And what I discovered in the arc of that is all of this works for your good, all of it. It's just a big journey. You get this compulsion, you get this thing that makes your blood beat, and you don't really know how to identify it. It's sort of your quasi-assignment, and it's something that may distinguish you. And you're tempted to make plans. And I learned very recently that your plans stink. They never work out. And nothing I ever planned in my life ever worked out. It was just me following this compulsion wherever it was going. Just follow this compulsion. Martin Luther King said, best faith is what? It's taking the first step. It's not looking at the whole staircase, because you don't know where it's going to the twists and turns. Just take the step. And I think, some of us are fortunate. Some of us get it very early. Some of us, we may catch it the older we get. I don't know. But I remember the first time it hit me when I knew, okay, this is what I had to do. I saw Placido Domingo. And we were in Japan. I was with the boys choir, and we were doing this wonderful concert for Ronald and Nancy Reagan. And their favorite tenor in the world was Placido Domingo. I never heard of him. But I was blossoming some now. I was 13, I was coming into my, it was a good year for me. I started performing, and I won this place to go to Japan. I was ecstatic. I was spending my summer in Japan. I'm singing for the Reagans. And this gentleman comes on stage I'd never heard of. An older choir member comes to me and said, come here, I want you to hear what a real tenor sounds like. Because they used to call me a baby tenor, a budding tenor. So I want you to hear what a real tenor sounds like. I said, okay. And I get out there and I said, now Ronald and Nancy Reagan's favorite tenor, Placido Domingo. And it was like he started to sing, and like if I wanted to move, I couldn't. And like everything became clear. Like I said, that's it. That's what I have to do that. Because my whole system lit up. And it was like I was exposed, and it was just me and him. I thought everything went dark. And years later, I discovered, okay, that was the first kind of compulsion. That thing, okay, I wanted to do that. So here I was, this 13-year-old scrawny black kid from New York talking about opera, which was great because I had an environment that actually encouraged it, except with my father, who was an immigrant, and I couldn't blame him because immigrants are very practical people. You have immigrant parents? Anybody have immigrant parents? You know what I'm talking about. Singing is not work. And my West Indian father, I went up to, this is what I wanted. What are you going to do with a degree in do-re-mi? He would look at me like I was crazy. And it was fine. It was like, I understood him. He was very practical. That whole side of the family is just practical. Now, they've done everything by the book. They've been cops. They've been firefighters. They work. They get real jobs. They don't dream. They don't hope and dream. They get real work. And so this was the compulsion. This thing ran through my veins. I found out I was pretty good at it. And suddenly all these other doors opened. I went to a wonderful high school that was an arts high school. And then I went on scholarship to college to the Hart School of Music. Great place. And as soon as I graduated before that, you run into this impasse, of course, freshman year. You get the college jitters, you know what I mean? Because I'm going there for singing. So I hear my father going, what are you going to do with a degree in do, re, mi? And there was a chorus with my roommates, because you go, well, what are you here for? I'm a vocal major. And they're going, what are you going to do with a degree in do, re, mi? And before you know it, you start going, yeah, what am I going to do with a degree in do, re, mi? And I called my mother, and I said, I think I'm going to change my major and the whole thing. I'm going to get something more secure. And she basically did the same thing to me she did when I was in the boys' choir trying to quit. But it was more mature now. She wasn't kicking me in the back of the pants. She said, listen, you started something. You're pretty good at it. These people gave you a lot of money to do it. This is actually your thing. Why don't you go with it and see what happens? I graduate from college. 5 months later, dun, 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 dun. It was weird. It was so crazy because I had plans. I was a goal-writing fool. This is why I don't believe people who tell you, I planned it out and I'm self-made. They're full of it. Nobody planned anything. All you do is go with your thing. You just go with that. You just go with it. And there's this fascinating thing that happens on your journey. You don't know where it takes you. I just met this wonderful forensic artist he and I spoke at Harvard College. And he says to me after my talk, I talked about detours in life. He said, it happened to me. I wanted to be a cop. That's what I wanted to be. But I got in this accident, and so I was unable to do that. But then I remembered, go back to the beginning, I've always been an artist. So now he's like one of the nation's top forensic artists. So it all is there. It's amazing how you get to where you're supposed to if you just be. And so the gift the circus gave to me when I joined this place was I was in this astounding community of people who everybody there, from me, the ringmaster, to the trapeze artist, to the animal trainer, to the guy sweeping dung, everybody there, I don't care who they were actually on their assignment. They were what they were supposed to be. I've never met a real, authentic clown that didn't know they were clowns. They may have felt awkward, and they always tell you, like when they were younger, they were trying to find their place, and they always were but then they went to the circus, and it was like, that's what I am. They had a Placido Domingo moment. There was this one clown, her name was Scarlett, and I used to think she was so funny. She just would do subtle things that just would have me rolling in aisles. I noticed she was really athletic. She would just do backflips and land on her stomach. I said, what do you guys? I said, we need you to do that. She said, I used to be a ballet dancer, but I kept getting kicked out of rehearsal because I was always being a clown. And she was always out of place with all that stuff until that's it. That's what I am. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us. But I think we get in our own way with our plans, in our own little doubts, and bad company, right? Because that's what you have to contend with too. You're dealing with that. I mean, I think the boldest thing for any human being is, the most daring thing you're going to do in your life is to be authentic, to actually be you. I think Miles Davis said something to that effect in regards to music. I mean, like you practice your whole life, you do all this stuff just to be yourself. And we go through these strange patterns in our life. Most of it is pride, it's fear, running away from the assignment, our thing, what God already just put in you. Just go do that. And we come up with all sorts of things. I'm going to flip houses, which there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you are. But we have a state of confusion, right? You see it all the time, especially now in the age of information. People are just overrun with little ways to make it rather than just adhering to your thing and trusting it. The greatest lesson my mother gave me was that. Just trust your thing. And boy, was she right. Because the reality was, as much as I loved opera, and I still do, for me, I knew eventually I'd want to have a family and all of that. And in the back of my head, I was like, how do you manage that? Because you're going to have to give something up. If you're a real successful opera singer, you're not home. You're on the road 10 months out of the year. Well, if you're in a circus, when I was in Ringling Brothers, you're not home. But the beauty of circus is it was run by families who performed by families to families. So you could bring the whole gang along. And although I wasn't married, I didn't have those aspirations when I started. Who knew I was going to meet this incredible lady during my time there? We got married right after a show in Chicago. And a few years later, we're bringing our kids there. But we could have all of that and have a life. I couldn't do that if I was an opera singer. So this was a fascinating thing with me following whatever this compulsion was and just trusting it and just going for it no matter what. I have a friend of mine, this beautiful friend of mine, who, when I was going through my doubt in college, I had warned him because he was going through it too. He was studying voice just like me. And the previous year, I pleaded with another friend of mine to please stick with it. She decided she wanted to transfer, go to another school, study education. This guy, same thing. He was doing well, but then he got, I'm going to study music management. So he decided to do that. Fast forward, both of these friends of mine, who I love very much, we've been in touch, they've had success in what they went into, and they're miserable as hell. It's possible to have monetary success, the things, but miss your thing. And the reality, if you miss your thing, it doesn't matter. All this, the stuff, the things, it doesn't matter. That's why you hear these people all the time, and you're wondering, my goodness, you seen this house? What did he kill himself for? You're out of place. And this is what I think people miss. This is really about your life. It all aligns. That good book is true. You seek the kingdom first, and everything comes to you after that. But we do it backwards. We want the stuff. We want the things. We want our plans. We want safety. And before you know it, you're mired in what you're not. And so my buddy calls me. He'd been a VP in sales, had much success, made a lot of money. And he calls me. This is the second time this happened to him inside 6 months. And he'd grown these companies, did the whole thing. And he calls me and said, man, I lost my job. And I couldn't help but hear the restrained jubilation in his voice. I said, well, you sound relieved. Yeah, I am, man. But I don't know, man. Why won't I learn this lesson, man? What do I do? I said, go back to the beginning, man. What are you? What's the thing what are you? What's your thing? I said, you know you're a musician. In music, I said, there you go. But my plan, I said, forget your plan. Just go play. Just go be what you're supposed to be. You know, I mean, you read scripture, he never said, Abraham, get up, go, and you'll go over here and go this way and you'll get that. He just said, get up and go. The promises came later. All that other stuff came later. I think our biggest lesson is trusting this compulsion, trusting the thing that makes your blood beat. I think we go there and just stay there and not wander off, getting caught up in the storm. It's kind of like walking on water. I love that illustration of Peter walking on water because it didn't say the wind stopped raging. It didn't say the waves stopped. It didn't say the thunder and lightning just suddenly came to come. It all was still there, but he was walking on water. And the thing I find, and I've lived, because I'm a Jeopardy question, so I can tell you, it's true. The thing I've lived is, and I mean, it's utterly remarkable, is when you serve what you are, you're going to win. You serve what you are, you serve your thing, you trust your thing, and it's hard. It's really hard because I don't know. You're type A, right? My wife's same thing. We have conversations all the time. We're in deep prayer all the time. She's type A. But I'm her opposite. When you were saying that, I was like, man, that's us. Because my wife, I'm the dreamer. Hey, baby, we can do it. And she comes and brings us back to earth. And, okay, here's the budget. All right, well, let's work that out. But we balance each other out, and it's great. But I know what you're saying. It's this interesting dynamic. And you're that way for a purpose. Because if you weren't like that, he'd be crazy. Right? And if he wasn't like he was, you'd be hard to be around. So it balances out. Am I right? Trust your thing, people. It'll take you far. Maybe you're on Jeopardy.